right, so we're going to start chapter 1 today. And one of the things that we need to know, starting out with chapter 1, and really 1 and 2 are kind of like groundwork for geometry. And so that's what this first section is going to be, is like terminology. Like, what are some things that we need to know that if I'm looking later on in chapter 5 and it says ABC or PQR, like what it's talking about. And so geometry just has its own language that it talks in, much like your generation has its own language. Whenever you text each other or a friend and you text your parents and they have no clue what you're talking about, that's kind of what geometry is. It has its own language. And so we're going to talk about what that language is. Some of this you already know. Some of it will be brand new. So I'm going to go pretty quickly through the parts that you already know, and then I'll kind of camp a little bit longer in the terms that are new. But remember, this is a video, so you can always stop and rewind if you missed something or didn't catch it as I was going through it. So let's go ahead and get started. So we've got a lot of terminology here that we need to look at. And so we're going to talk about a point. So everybody should know what a point is. Sorry, that's really bad. Is an indicated location, has no size. Basically, the thing that you need to know whenever you're talking about a point is that it is going to be only one capital letter. So if they're talking in a sentence and it says A, it's talking about point A, or P, it's talking about point P. So points will always be one capital letter, only one, don't use more than one. And you say, why only one? Because when we get to a line, that is going to be two capital letters. And so only, I'm going to abbreviate here, caplet, only two, no more than two. So let's say I've got this line right here. We'll call this A, a B, and a C. When I name this line, I can call it line AB. I can call it line AC. I could call it line BC. I could call it line CB, CA. I can use any two letters that are on this line, and I name that point, but only two. I can't use more than two. And then when I mark it, so when I write AB, I put a line over top of it, and it has arrows in both directions saying that that line is going on and on. Okay. Again, something you probably should have already known coming in here. So let's look at segment. Sorry, I'm trying to learn this new pad and it's not so great. So segment also has two capital letters. Okay, so these two capital letters up here. And I'm going to come back to this one in just a minute. So I'll put a dot there so I remember to come back to it. A segment has two capital letters, and so we'll use this example up here, but we're only talking about a part of that. So I'm going to change colors here. If I was just talking about just this section, so like, for example, Highway 49 is a highway that runs from Fayetteville all the way to Bentonville, and it keeps going. Actually, it changes names, obviously, when it changes states, but it goes all the way down to Fort Smith. It goes up. But if I was just talking about just the section that's between Springdale and Fayetteville, like that section of the highway, I need to tell somebody that I'm talking about that section of that highway in a different way. And so what I do is I still name it the section, like here's Fayetteville, here's Springdale. So from Fayetteville to Springdale, that direction right there. But I don't put arrows on it. I just put a segment, which means I'm saying I'm just talking about just this blue part right here, not the whole thing. Okay. Now let me go back to line because I forgot to tell you all one thing when we were up here. There is one other way to say a line, and that is one lowercase letter. And so you actually knew this before you came in here and you didn't know you knew it. So last year you should have, and maybe even before that, you should have learned the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And so if you ever saw this drawn, you may have remembered a capital letter here across from the lowercase c, a capital A here, and then a capital B here. So remember, points have to be capital letters, but segments or lines can be one lowercase letter. And we're only going to see that usually named by one lowercase letter in two situations. One is when it's a triangle, and then the other one is in chapter 3 when we start doing parallel and perpendicular lines. I will stress it again then. So I just wanted to point that out while we were here. All right, let's go back to finishing out here with array. So you should have known array. Array has one endpoint, so it begins somewhere and then it goes out, but it passes another point on its way out. So this right here would be called array A, B. Sorry, I don't know why I wrote it backwards. You always have to put the letter that is the endpoint first. So let's say this array was going this direction, and we'll call this A and this C. When I name this array right here, I have to say C first because it's starting at C and then it's going through A. And so this little marker right here, let me change colors here. This little marker right here and right here is always going to point right. Don't ever write it to the other direction. So even though this ray was going to the left right here, I still write my arrow to the right. I just put the letter that starts it first. Okay. Opposite rays. Opposite rays are just what they are. They're rays that go in opposite directions. So let's say I have a ray going this direction. I have a ray going this direction. These two rays are opposites. They're going to share a common center point. I'll change colors here. So like this end point where they start and go out this direction and then out that direction. So if I asked you to name opposite rays in this figure, you would say ray AB and AC are opposite rays. Okay. Now, plane, collinear, and coplanar are probably new. So we're going to kind of spend a little bit more time here than we did the first few examples. So let's look at a plane. A plane is just a flat surface. You actually knew what a plane was before you came in here, not an airplane. However, you may not have known that you knew that. So anytime you did shapes in elementary school, triangles, pentagons, those are all planes. Okay. And so the smallest closed shape is a triangle, and that has 3 points to it. That's why all planes have to have 3 capital letters. You can have more, but you have to have 3. Okay, so let's say I had a square shape. That's now a rectangle. We'll call it A, B, C, and D. I can name this any 3 letters. I could say A, B, C, B, C, D, C, D, A, D, A, B, B, A, D. Like I can pick any 3 letters to name this plane. So that's what a plane is, a flat surface. A wall, like in your classroom, would be a plane. The ceiling would be a plane. We're going to look at an example like that on the next slide. All right, collinear are all points that are in the same line. They're like co-workers work together. Collinear are points that are together. So if I have a line like this, I keep using A, B, and C, so sorry, A, B, C, and let's say E is over here. Okay, A, B, and C are collinear. E is non-collinear. So you're going to have a question like this on your quiz next week. You'll also have a question on your assignment today, and it'll say like name a non-collinear point. So E would be non-collinear because it's not with the rest of the points. Okay. Coplanar is the same thing. It's points that are in the same plane. So if I have this shape right here, A, B, C, D, and let's say F is floating out here. A, B, C, D are all coplanar, and then this one would be non-coplanar because it's not in the same plane. Think of your classroom. The points that are on the ceiling are non-coplanar to the points that are on the wall. So the wall is a different plane than the ceiling. Okay. All right, so let me clear this before I go to the next slide. Clear. And then go back. And now I think I can move. Yes, okay, now let's go back to a pen. All right. So this right here, this would be an example of our classroom. Okay. And so this, some of you, this is kind of hard to visualize, and it may be moving while you look at it. And for those of you that figures move, I'm so sorry. There's just nothing I can do about that. That's just the way your brain works, and God has created us all uniquely. And so some of us, this picture has been bouncing around because that's how your brain visualizes things. And some of you, it hasn't moved at all. All right, so right here, if I was to look at this, I'm gonna try and trace this right here. This top piece right here would be a plane, and if I asked you to name this plane, you can pick any 3 letters. You can name it with all of them. You could say LONK if you want to, or you could just say NKL, like any 3 that you want to, but you can name it with 4. Is that plane right there? And change colors. This plane, oh, so sorry, terrible. Can't write on this little XP pen very well. All right, so this plane right here, again, I can name it KNMJ. But one of the things I want you to see here is that this segment right here, okay, is where the 2 planes intersect. So anytime we have 2 planes, they intersect at a line. So the intersection of 2 planes is a line, and that's what that's talking about right there. So if they ask you that question, or I ask you that question, so here's a really easy way to do this. Let's list all of the letters for the red one that I traced, so LONK. And then we're going to list all of the letters for the purple one that I traced, KNMJ. And so I want you to look at these letters right here and notice that NK is in both of them. That's a way that you can find the intersection really easily. So those of you that struggle visually to see figures like this, if you'll list the letters out, you can identify them a little bit easier. So that's just a tool for some of you. Okay. I can also take, let's see, I have another color. Yeah. Let's trace this plane right here. And so if I was going to ask you where all 3 of these, the red, the purple, and the kind of pinkish color meet, some of you can see it, but I'm going to go ahead and list it. So I've got LONK, I've got KNMJ, and then the pink one is LKIJ. So I look at these, each one of these, and find out what they have in common. And if you look at this, you'll notice that they all have the letter K, let's see if I can circle that, in common. And so when I have 3 planes that come together, so the red plane, the purple plane, and the pink plane, their common is going to be a point. So they all meet at K. So think of your classroom, 2 walls and the ceiling, where they come together is right here at this point. That's where they all are touching together. I can also see that that's the only point that is coplanar for all of them. So that's what we're looking for, is like coplanar points. Same thing here. These are the only 2 points that are coplanar, but because it's 2 points, then it becomes a segment instead of just points. And so that goes back to the original terminology we were looking at. So that's really all your lesson is today, is you're just going to be answering questions about, like, how do you write this line? How do I write this plane? Where do these planes cross? That sort of thing.